Let's get into the top 15. My new top 15 here in college football. Remember, I expanded to 15 just because as we get closer to the college football playoff and these final rankings, I thought it would be important to have these teams, how I see them, near the bubble line. And remember, the bubble line really is 10 because we're going to get a team that's not inside of this top 15, two of them, into this playoff, into the 12-team playoff with the group of 5 champion and potentially the ACC champion or a second group of 5 champion. We'll see who wins those two conferences. So here we go. Let's start at number 15. It's Vandy. Vandy beat Kentucky 45-17. Pavia went off. Diego Pavia has been a bright spot in college football. I've loved watching him play. I really have. I think he's going to be up for some of these awards nationally. But listen, this is a guy that has given his heart and soul and changed the game in a lot of ways with that lawsuit for former junior college players, which, by the way, helped out a lot of players throughout the country. Almost every one of these games that I call, there's a player that benefited from the ruling that Diego Pavia championed, getting that extra year. And so he's taken advantage of that. Vanderbilt has been terrific under Clark Lee. Miami at 14. They beat Virginia Tech 34-17 on the road. Virginia Tech's now 3-8. Beck threw for 320 and 4 touchdowns with only his 5 incompletions. So he was efficient. He was ready to go. The defense had 5 sacks. They had 9 tackles for loss. They did not defend the run particularly well. 235 sack-adjusted rush yards, over 7 per carry against Va-Tech. That's not great. They've won 3 straight by at least 3 scores, so they're making their CFP case. I just don't know if it's going to be enough because I think we all realize if we watch the games and watch the film, like they're not as good as Notre Dame. And that's the team that they're going to be trying to argue against, but they're too far from Notre Dame right now in the rankings, in my rankings and in the rankings in the CFP. At number 13, it's Texas. They rolled on offense 52-37. Arch had a big day and the offense got going. And that could be problematic for Texas A&M. However, what happened to their defense? Like, you look up and Texas defensively has given up 38, 31, 35, and 37 in their last 4. What happened to this defense? I know Michael Taft has been in and out of the lineup, but what? I don't understand that. So Pete Kwiatkowski is he's got to figure something out because on that trajectory, Marcel Reed and A&M will eat them alive, and they'll have to win that game against Texas A&M like it's a 2016 Big 12 game, and it's going to be like 57-52. You know, their defense has got to improve. They have not played well over the last 4. I already talked about Michigan. They're at my number 12 team. They continue to get better and better. Like I said, more balanced, and those young guys getting a lot of experience. At number 11, I'm going to go with BYU. BYU played an impressive game on the road at Cincinnati. Cincinnati was still alive. They controlled their own fate towards getting to the Big 12 championship game and potentially going to the CFP. But BYU ended that with a dominant performance at the line of scrimmage. LJ Martin was unreal. 200 rushing yards. I think it was like 220 something, but over 200. BYU held the ball for 38 and a half minutes. Kalani Sitake, by the way, he's 21-3 over the last 2 years. Like, this is a really good, sound, fundamentally tough program. Now, they've got a lot of older guys, but when you watched LJ Martin, those Cincinnati Bearcat defenders wanted no part of him. All game long, he was just battering that team. The offensive line was battering that. 38 minutes, time of possession. And they win that game and are one step closer towards going back or going to the Big 12 championship game with a rematch with Texas Tech. And that's a team that is very good, but you never know. The ball bounces BYU's way, and they could wind up into the playoff. At 10, I've got Alabama still. That's where I had them last week. They beat Eastern Illinois. It was Illinois, not Indiana. There we go. At number 9, Oklahoma. I moved them down 1. Okay, so this is like OU fans are going to get all upset. Let me take a drink of water. All right, here's what OU is. OU is an unbelievably good defense. They really are. Love watching them on defense. And they're a really bad offense. And so you know what Oklahoma is? They're a souped-up version of Iowa. That's all they are. And in some circles, people will be like, "Oh, well, that's an insult." I don't view it as that because I've respected Iowa for a long time. Before Colin Cowherd was calling them the fake ID of college football, like I have loved Iowa for a long time because they do the right things to win games. And that's what Oklahoma is. So this is a compliment, but it's also a ceiling because we've known for a long time, even those of us that have been Iowa backers, that there's a ceiling on the level that Iowa can get to playing that way. And in particular, playing with an offense that can't generate points. And OU is in that boat. They're a souped-up version of Iowa. They've got 8 offensive touchdowns over the last 4 games, and they are hugely reliant, massively reliant on big plays and field position to do it. Like, massively reliant. So it's not like they're scoring a lot of touchdowns anyways. And in order to score those touchdowns, they either have to have a short field or totally reliant on giant explosive plays, in particular for touchdowns. Versus Missouri, 2 offensive touchdowns, an 87-yard catch and run versus Missouri. And the other TD was when they got the ball in the Missouri 35. The defense forced Mizzou to punt out of their own end zone, and so they got a short field. Defense creating points. Those were the 2 offensive touchdowns. Versus Alabama, 1 offensive touchdown. They got a defensive TD, the only offensive TD. The drive started at the Bama 31. Tennessee, 2 offensive touchdowns. They got a defensive touchdown, both offensive touchdowns. They got the ball about midfield, so basically a short field. Against Ole Miss, they scored 3 times on offense. 2 touchdowns of 65 plus and 1 TD when they started on their own 40. It's like big plays in field position all over the place. And all I'm saying is like there is a ceiling on that because someone will prevent that. And at some point, someone will score 20, 24, 27 on your defense. It just happens. Even the great defenses of yesteryear, even you think about some of these great defenses that Alabama had, that Georgia had, when you get into a playoff run, you'll get into a moment where it's like, oh no, we're all of a sudden in a shootout. And I've always said, like, you have to have the ability to win both. You've got to have answers. OU doesn't have those answers because they can't score enough, generate enough points. That doesn't mean I don't like them. I love Oklahoma. They are earning their way into this playoff in a massive way. I love watching their defense, but their offense gives me pause, gives me some concern, which is why I moved them to 9. I moved Notre Dame to 8. I moved Notre Dame to 8 because this Notre Dame team is dominating. Now, I get it. Like, this score got out of hand. I don't know what's happening at Syracuse. It's not good, though. Clearly, something's going wrong at Syracuse. They were down 21-0 before Notre Dame took an offensive snap. How's that even possible? Like, what are we doing? Now, granted, Syracuse is starting a kid that's a true freshman that's basically a lacrosse kid. Not his problem, and I understand there are injuries, but Notre Dame was insane. Jeremiah Love in the first half had like 8 carries for 171 and 3 tugs, 4 tugs, 5 tugs, 6 tugs, whatever it was. But this is why I moved Notre Dame up, is since week 4, the D has basically been as good as Oklahoma's defense, and the offense has been light years better. In the last 8 games, Notre Dame's defense, number 3 in the country. Their offense, number 4 in the country, scoring the football. Over that same span, Oklahoma's offense has been 73rd, their defense 15th. I totally get that the schedules have been different. I'm just saying, like, that is a huge difference, though. A massive difference, and in particular on the offensive side. So just something to chew on as I move those 2 teams around in my top 15. At number 7, I've got Ole Miss. They were off this week. More on Lane Kiffin in a moment. I'm going to finish out the show with my thoughts on Lane Kiffin, so stay tuned for that. Texas Tech is at 6. They were off this week. Oregon moved up to 5. I moved them over Texas Tech. If you look at the most advanced metrics and even the resume, I mentioned it earlier, Oregon's resume better than Texas Tech's. So Oregon goes to number 5. I moved them up after that really impressive win over USC. And then my top 4 is going to stay the same that it did last week. So I've got Texas A&M at 4, Georgia at 3, Indiana at 2, and Ohio State at 1. I know people were very upset with my Georgia over Texas A&M, but I just think Georgia is better than Texas A&M. I think Georgia's the best team in the SEC. I think that they've proven that out. In particular, that win over Texas was huge. They are done in SEC play. Maybe they get to Atlanta. Maybe, we'll see. I'm not sure. But that's how I see it. And then I still have Ohio State up there at number 1 and Indiana at number 2. Indiana was off this last week. They will play Purdue. They win. They go to Indy. Ohio State wins against Michigan. They go to Indy, and we could have a 1 and 2 versus each other in the Big 12 Big 10, championship game in Indianapolis. The teams just on the outside that just didn't quite get into my top 15. I start with Utah. They had that huge comeback, but man, they allowed like 500 yards rushing. Now that was a massive comeback, and Bird Ficklin was running around, and man, their offense has been lights out the last 4 or 5 games. They had 4th and 1 inside of 2 minutes, and they get a big old run. It's 47-44. The place is going crazy. They got the black uniforms on. Wild game. Both coaches crying after the game. I will wait, until it's official to give, kind of my complete thoughts about Kyle Whittingham. I will just tell you, I am really glad for Kyle that he got that win, which feels like the last time he's going to coach in Rice-Eccles Stadium. And so, and you could kind of sense that. So Utah was just on the outside. I couldn't put him in after that defensive performance. Virginia was right on the outside. Tennessee was right on the outside. Hey, impressive. A win in the Swamp. First time since early 2000s? Congratulations to Tennessee. I think it was 2003 was their last win in the Swamp. So they go in there and beat basically a dead program. So way to go. Way to beat a dead horse, Tennessee. Congratulations. Miss Becky, I'll be waiting for your email. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. And you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.